Alright, new year, new reviews, whoop-de-doo. Hi, Huge Movie Fanatic Nate reporting for the first review of 2016, which is the beginning of the 6th year of Huge Movie Fanatic's channel existence. Very cool. Yay, whoop-de-doo. I'm coming at you to review, hopefully this doesn't go too long. Coming at you to review the 7th Star Wars film, Episode 7, Star Wars The Force Awakens, or Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. It's pretty much just known as Star Wars The Force Awakens. Now, I guess it should be noted that this review is coming from someone who's old enough where they saw, I know I saw Return of the Jedi in its first original run. I don't think I've seen any in the theater. I don't think I've seen any of the others. Certainly not the first one or Empire, but I know I saw Return of the Jedi in its first run. And this review is coming from a person who grew up with the original trilogy, who, while I was growing up, the original trilogy was all there was. So, I think it's kind of fair, common consensus, not that that really matters, that the original trilogy is the best part of the 6 movies, and I would concur. The interesting thing about this whole saga is, the original trilogy was one part of my life, single digits to double digits, teenage years and stuff like that. And then the prequel trilogy was another decade of my life, was my 20s, and then 10 years later we get the first movie of, the beginning of what I assume to be the never-ending saga of Star Wars or whatever, until it stops making money, which is never going to happen. So what's interesting is, each one of these, trilogies came in different part of my life, and now that we're continuing with the 7th movie, it's yet another 10 years later from the last, the last movie, the Episode 3, last movie of the second trilogy, prequel trilogy, and it's another decade, and it's another part of my life. So kind of interesting how long all these movies have lasted and whatever, and just whatever. So there you go. So trying to keep I can already tell I'm just rambling. So anyway, in the spirit of trying to keep this as short as possible, I was excited about the idea of a movie that took place after Return of the Jedi, because in a way I've been wanting to see that ever since Return of the Jedi came out. But the older and older I got, the more that it's so fantastically, let's face it, the prequel trilogy as the years go on, for me, isn't really all that bad. Episode 1, me and Matt have reviewed every single Star Wars movie, 1 through 6, on this channel. My personal, least favorite of the 6 is Episode 1. And that was until they made Episode 7. I might as well just say straight off the bat, I've only seen it once. But this is just how I feel about it after only seeing it once. Episode 7, pretty much at this point, is my least favorite of the 7 Star Wars films. It actually puts Episode 1 my second least favorite, if that makes sense. So this is my least favorite Star Wars film of all 7 movies. If you're looking for a pro Force Awakens review, you might as well just click away from this review, because it's not going to be that. So, starting the review of The Force Awakens. There was all this talk, of course I covered it in trailer reviews and stuff, of Luke Skywalker not being on the poster, and there was all this concern. This trailer is this review is obviously just going to be completely spoiler, just nothing but spoilers. Obviously anyone who wants to see it at this point has saw the movie, so it shouldn't be a problem. This is, a spoiler-laden review. So there was talk, what I was saying is there was talk that, Luke Skywalker not being on the poster in the trailers, maybe he's the bad guy, maybe he's the bad guy under the mask and the black shroud cloak thingy with the stupid red lightsaber with the 2 stupid guard things that just hurt you more than anyone else. And I was really worried, not that it fucking matters because it's only a movie, but I was really worried as a Star Wars fan, as a whatever, not a huge Star Wars fan, but a Star Wars, fan of, I grew up with the original trilogy and stuff, and Luke being in a way kind of like the heroes, one of the biggest heroes in all of, whatever, just storytelling in general, and especially, because of my particular generation and my age. the idea that he could possibly take Luke and turn him into a bad guy was just so lame to me. And I gotta tell you, I wish they'd done that. Because in my opinion, that would have been a lot more cool and creative than what they ended up doing, where if my calculations are correct, the guy in the, the mask, the Darth Vader of Episode 7, if you will, is Luke Skywalker's, nephew or whatever, the product of Han and Leia, of course Leia being Luke's sister. Just like very much with Halloween 4, how Jamie, by that time, Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't going to be a part of Halloween anymore. So here, since part two, we established very foolishly that, Michael and Laurie are related. They felt like when they did Halloween 4, they have to continue that. And the same thing goes with Force Awakens. We feel like we have to continue this, obviously at the end of Return of the Jedi, probably not necessarily knowing if that was going to be the last movie at that time or not, they introduced that Leia, that's a movie we introduced that Leia was Luke's sister, correct? And then of course saying, the Force is strong with her, meaning Episode 7 at that time, if they had made it in say 87 or something like that, maybe Leia would have been a, gold bikini clad, Jedi running around welding a lightsaber. Who knows what their plans were at the time, but regardless, what they ended up doing with that whole plot point of Leia being at the end of, or during Return of the Jedi, being revealed as Luke's sister, what they did with this movie, 30 odd years later, is had, she's a little too old to be Miss Jedi or whatever, not that it stopped Yoda, but being this so far later, we'll just have Leia and Han hook up, which of course they're, and everyone knew they were gonna anyway, and the offspring is obviously, the Force is gonna be strong with the offspring because it's strong with Leia, even though whatever, and that can be our new bad guy. I gotta tell you, that's just, personally, if you like that, if you like this movie and you're still watching this review, I mean, if you like it, that's fine, more power to you. I'm not saying you shouldn't like this movie. I'm just saying that I don't like this movie. I was very unimpressed with virtually every aspect of this movie. In my opinion, it was just so devoid of any kind of interest. First of all, what's his name's name was on the credits, be it at the very end. I can't remember his name now, but the guy from The Exorcist, the guy who seems like he's just going to live forever, who ironically was made up as an old man in The Exorcist, so I kind of always think of him as being old when they filmed that movie, but he wasn't old at the time. Max von Sydow, who was, I thought, when I saw his name on a poster or credits, I was like, oh wow, they did Christopher, or that guy who was in Episode 3 or whatever, and Max von Sydow seemed like a good actor for a Star Wars movie, and turns out he's just in like the first, I don't know if he dies in the first scene or whatever, but there was this depressing raid at the beginning of the movie where, oh, well, I don't have to tell you. You know what happens at the beginning of the movie. Long story short, they completely waste Max von Sydow when he should have been, he should have been some kind of a dark, bad guy. I was sure he was going to be a bad guy. It would have been a great, evil guy or whatever, and he wasn't. He was just wasted. Max von Sydow was completely wasted. Long story short, this movie. Remember how if you watch my review of like the last Terminator Genesis trailer and the review of the movie, I referred to that as being like a Terminator fan who, some little middle school kid who was just won the lotto to, write and direct a movie being freaking 13 or 14 years old, and with all the, money and effects and everything that goes into a normal blockbuster movie, the only difference is being it's just written and directed by a 14 or 15 year old. That's what I got watching this movie. It's like there was Star Wars sights, there was Star Wars sounds, but for me it didn't feel like barely at all it felt like Star Wars. I mean, out of all 7 movies, even episode 1 seems like, a part of the original trilogy for me compared to this movie, and I'm probably gonna get a lot of shit for that. That's your right to to give me shit. But that's just my take on this. There was, it's 30 odd years later or whatever. The one thing that was cool about the prequels, it's funny how I see the prequels in a much grander light after seeing this movie. One of the cool things about the prequels was, all of the different kind of ship designs and all kinds of different, there was things and stuff in the original trilogy that said original trilogy, and then when you do the prequel trilogy, there were things that were unique to those movies and those series of movies. Like Episode 7 is like just basically slightly reworked versions of like the X-Wings and TIE fighters and all this shit. It's like 30, more than 30 years later, and like everything looks exactly the same. And granted, in theory, the idea of seeing, hearing TIE fighters and seeing them and hearing and seeing X-Wings and shit sounds cool, but it's kind of like, what? Maybe, we already did that in the prequel trilogy, and it's just like the coolest new addition to this whole freaking movie is like BB-8. That's it. And granted, that's a genius design. Best thing about Force Awakens, in my opinion, is just the BB-8 design is just genius, and actually having, when I saw him in the trailer, I thought it was just CG, but having it actually work physically and be an actual prop was genius. The best thing, the best thing about the movie is just that robot design, in my opinion. I don't know really what to say. I mean, the two new like heroes I thought was completely lame. You got this stormtrooper who's just like, his first time out on the job, he's just like, oh shit, I didn't sign up for this, like blasting people and innocent people and all this shit, and just wants to get. I just get frustrated when I think of this movie. Long story short, the two new heroes, the black guy and the white girl, I didn't connect with at all. I thought they were completely uninteresting, and the thing that was so lame about them is like they get in the Millennium Falcon, and I don't know if we're supposed to assume that she's flown it before. I hope she's flown it before, because even if she has, all of a sudden during this action scene they both run in the Millennium Falcon. The keys happen to be in it. They take it off. I thought they'd run in there and see Han and Chewie laying on the floor sleeping or something funny, and they'd wake them up and they'd get them to Han and Chewie to rescue them, but they end up just getting in it, and she just flies it away like she's just flown it for 20 years. And I was just, as a viewer, I was just saying, what the hell? Has she flown this before? Has she not? I mean, that guy's never been in the Millennium Falcon before, and all of a sudden he's shooting the guns, just like, and it's just like, the whole bit about the two younger people getting in the Falcon and just taking it just was a perfect metaphor for the whole movie, which is, basically taking something familiar like the Millennium Falcon and just putting a new a young cast in it and just milking something familiar for all it's worth, and it was just like there was no magic for me of these two new young characters taking the Millennium Falcon, even though it was the Millennium Falcon. Let's face it, without Han and Chewie, or even Lando Calrissian for that matter, and goofy, flappy face alien guy, it's just no magic. In the trailers we've seen, for years, the Millennium Falcon flying around in the desert and chase through the desert, and I just always assumed that it was Han and Chewie at the helm. And it turns out to be these two stupid new kids who the Force is strong with both of them. Neither of them take 1 second of Jedi school or training from any short green alien or nothing, and all of a sudden they can do all this fly bang, whiz bang shit. Like, kids grow up for all their lives being trained every day by freaking older Jedi and shit, and these people don't need that. The Force is so strong with them that they can just get in. God, I sound like an old crusty, grumpy bastard, but I just it's like, you got this super, nephew of Luke Skywalker, bad guy who can stop a blaster shot in midair, which was cool. That was one of the only cool things in my opinion about the movie, having that just blaster thing just hovering there and shit. He's so evil, he can do that, and he's so strong with the dark side or whatever, he can do that, but yet this girl who's never heard of the Force until 3 days, or maybe even 2 days ago, beats this guy, just for the very first time using a lightsaber, beats this guy who's super strong with the dark side, unless, there was all kinds of subtle shit that I didn't read into it. Maybe she, Duh, fuck. I feel like what's the point of going on and on and on and bitching? But maybe, we got that little bit of the scene when she was like being interrogated that she was kind of like making him nervous, so maybe fighting her he got nervous. But why would Mr. Dark with the Force... Oh my gosh. Obviously I talked about before, I hoped that they, weren't going to just kill Han and Chewie and Leia and Luke at the very beginning and continue off with the young cast. And I guess that kind of did happen, except not at the beginning. At the end, I thought it was so lame that the way they did kill Han and just taking this completely lame dark side character and trying to make him the meanest guy in the galaxy by killing a childhood hero you grew up with your whole life, I thought was so lame. There's some things, in my opinion, you just don't do, and killing Han Solo on screen is one of them. I think that they made this movie so far after Return of the Jedi, they would have been better off, in my opinion, not having any of the people who were in the original trilogy, being episode 4, 5, or 6, be in this and just say things like, through other characters saying that, they died at this point in history or whatever, because just showing them, I thought, I don't know. I know it's just a movie, but seeing Han Solo die was something that I just felt was... It's like, who wants to see Han Solo die, basically, and I think it was a lame attempt to, a simple lame attempt to really make this guy evil seem evil and all this shit. So another thing I thought was lame is, in the whole episode 1 through 6, you had basically the Emperor, who was pretty much in charge behind the scenes of everything. He was very neatly disposed of at the end of episode 6. In my opinion, episode 6 is the last of the Star Wars movies. This episode 7 and whatever comes afterwards, in my world, in my psychotic world, is not going to be Star Wars movies. In my world, everything they live happily ever after with the Ewoks and doing marshmallows and shit. That's my world. I thought it was so stupid in the especially with the special editions, having them presumably on Coruscant or whatever, topple down that the big statue of the Emperor or whatever, and it just ended so magnificently at the end of Jedi, especially with the special edition, that episode 7, Force Awakens is, oh, son of a bitch. So anyway, the Emperor is destroyed. He was the biggest bad guy of all 6 previous movies. He's destroyed at the end of 7. Now we got this guy who, I'm not huge into Star Wars lore. I don't know if this Gollum CG creature or whatever the hell it is on the throne projected that they always go and talk to, very much like the Emperor. I don't know if he was mentioned in a previous movie and just never seen, but I thought it was I just thought it was lame to have this. And of course, who I'm assuming was, mocap by Andy Serkis or whatever, the guy who just seems to mocap for a living or whatever. Anyway, this new baddie who we always report to who just takes the place of the Emperor, I thought was so lame. Chewbacca looking actually younger than he did, in my opinion, in Return of the Jedi, was just lame to me. And another thing that was lame is, I don't know if that was supposed to be Admiral Akbar or what, and the Leia's whatever. But it's like 30 odd years later, and it's like the animatronics don't even look as good as they did in the actual Return of the Jedi. Like, people, because of all this CG shit, no one knows how to make freaking decent looking animatronic puppet shit anymore. Also, Mr. JJ seemed to be so adamant on practical effects, yet you have this Yoda-ish female, was she completely, I think, CG character, the one with the, goggles that she can make her eyes big and small and adjust the magnifyingness of her goggles and shit. Completely CG character that didn't need to be a CG character. C-3PO and R2-D2 are on the poster, and they're probably in the movie for a total running time of maybe 2.5 minutes. I mean, R2 just sits there like a dead, paperweight and comes alive at the very end and rolls a few feet forward, beeps, and then projects the fucking map. God, I sound like an old ornery bastard. So as we saw in the poster, you know, it looked like another Death Star, which was kind of cool name at the same time. Turns out to be, you know, it's kind of cool and kind of dumb at the same time, where instead of a Death Star, it's like they built, I don't know what, if they took a planet and basically built this big laser cannon as a part of it. I don't think they built the whole planet. That would have been a little much. But long story short, the thing was, I think, named Star Killer or something like that, which of course was the original name for Luke Skywalker before they changed it or whatever. Using that name, Star Killer, for the new Death Star was kind of cool, and the idea that it takes, you know, it'll actually kill a star to charge up and then blast it out that was kind of cool. And but still, whatever, I thought it was so lame that for the third time in all 7 movies, you got this another kind of Death Star thing, which, you know, I said in a trailer review that they better not have some, of course, you know, when they can't learn like 2 times in a row. You build fucking another one of these or make a planet into one of these, and they still put this stupid thing where people can fly ships to and shoot it and it'll blow the whole planet up. It's so stupid that they use the same goddamn thing 3 times in a row. Like, why would you build, you know, if you were going to have something in this, you know, planet that you can just shoot and blows the whole thing up, you think you'd want to like have it defended, either not build it at all where you can, you know, this auto-destruct thing where you can shoot this spot and it'll blow up, or have it very heavily guarded. You know, the fact that they always get in there and shoot, you know, obviously it is guarded and shit, but I mean, basically, long story short, this is like, and I could tell from the trailers too, it's like basically a remake of A New Hope in my opinion. It's just you know, how they rebooting everything. In a way, this is just a reboot of New Hope in my opinion. I mean, the very, very same thing. You got the droid with the fucking secret part of the map with the, you know, thing on there. But that's another thing. This whole movie is like about trying to find Luke, and I'm like, I'm waiting for Luke, and then there was one point where that bad guy took the mask off, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's not going to be Luke, and it's not Luke, and I was like, oh, you know, whatever, my lucky stars, and it turns out to, you know, I wish it would have been Luke. At least that would have been, I don't know, fuck. So what I was saying is the whole movie, you know, is about trying to find Luke, and then at the very end, you know, they find the droids, BB-8 and R2 come together, and between both of them, they got both parts of the map, so they can find Luke, walk up the stairs, and have Luke turn around and be like, oh my gosh, there he is, and then they stare in each other's eyes, and then that's it. Mark Hamill is the second billing in this movie, and he doesn't have one line of dialogue. He's in the movie for probably maybe 90 seconds or so, maybe even less than that. How did he get second billing by not being in the movie? I don't understand that. Like, I don't get it. I want to know how much he got paid for standing there on the mountain, by the way, too. You know, hopefully he was able to get a nice amount of money for that bullshit. And I really hope if they got plans for him, obviously, for episode 8, they shoot it quick, because people don't live forever, you know. I think we're going to leave it at that. Stars for Star Wars Force Awakens for me is 1 3/4 stars. That's upon my, you know, first viewing. Obviously, I've said it before, I can't, you know, catch every single thing in one viewing. But I mean, I even saw episode 1 more than once in the theater. I saw all 3 of the prequel movies more than once in the theater. I don't plan to see this again in the theater. It's my least favorite of the 7 Star Wars movies. It makes me, at least, it makes me look at Phantom Menace in a whole new light, you know. In closing, one thing that I thought was so lame about this movie is, at least, like all the other Star Wars movies, even Phantom Menace, I mean, have these, it's like a progression. You know, the epic pod race scene, and you got these just epic scenes, you know, Hoth battle and Ewok battle and all this shit, which, you know, Mustafar and this water planet, you know, and all these, you know, iconic locations, vehicles, you know, battles, Jabba, you know, Sarlacc pit, all this shit, and you come away from this movie, there, in my memory, what was, you know, there was no epic, like, location, epic battle that was just like, you know, anything that we hadn't seen before. It was just, what is there that happens? A person could say, ooh, the epic chase through the planet, through all the fallen star destroyer ruins and shit. That's another thing. I don't think, the trailers, of course, I think everyone assumed that the desert planet was Tatooine, and I don't think it was. I think it was a new planet, which I thought was lame to have a new planet that looked exactly like a planet that was heavily featured in the original 6 movies. Why not? If it's going to look exactly the same, why not have it be Tatooine? I don't think it is. I don't think I heard that name. I think I heard another name in regards to the planet they were on. I don't know why I'm giving it 1 3/4 stars, to be honest. Maybe it's more like 1.5. There were certainly a couple of cool points. Blasting out of the wherever they were with the TIE fighter was kind of cool. There were cool points. BB-8 obviously was probably the best creation of this whole movie. None of the new characters I really affected me in any way that was like, oh wow, of course I'm just getting older and older and grumpier. So, yeah. I like to think I wasn't expecting, a whole lot. I don't think my expectations were crazy. I like to think I went into the theater, you know, not expecting. One thing I did expect is this to be better than any of the prequel movies. But as you know, if you've seen me and Matt's review of Episode 3, I regard that as just really freaking amazing. Seeing that fantastic final transition of Anakin into the dark side, and the guy who plays the Emperor just dead on perfect. It's funny how this movie completely makes me look at the prequels trilogy in a completely different light. Like, you thought these were bad, just wait. And it's so weird because it's the same guy who did, the Star Trek 2009, which I thought and still think is pretty good, for being a reboot of Star Trek. So I wish he could have done the same successful thing with this movie, but I don't even really necessarily need to see it again. I'll probably buy the Blu-ray, of course. I want to see it again, but probably not in the theaters. So that's my long-winded bitch rant review of The Force Awakens. Obviously, I expect to be attacked for not liking this piece of shit. So attack away. So until next time, enjoy The Force is definitely weak with this movie, in my opinion. If you like it, feel free to tell in the comments, in between your cursing me out, swear words and calling me names, what you liked about it and why you think it's a strong movie or has anything good about it. I don't claim to say I'm right. I'm just saying that this is my opinion and that's what I think about it. So I don't know how much of this I'm going to keep in, how much I'm going to cut out. I feel like I just went on and on and on. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.